Today, we are diving into one of the most important, most influential thinkers in all of Western history, Plato. This wasn't a guy who just sat around asking big questions. Oh no, he tried to design a perfect world right from the ground up. So let's explore his incredible blueprint. It's amazing when you think about it. When we listen back through the echoes of ancient Greece, one voice just rings out louder than almost any other. We're talking 2,000 years after his death, and Plato's ideas are, well, they're everywhere. He's the one who took philosophy out of these stuffy, abstract discussions and brought it to the people, and his thoughts still shape so much of how we see the world today. So, to really get his ideas, you gotta understand his life. He was born Aristocles. Fun fact, Plato was actually a nickname, maybe meaning broad-shouldered, because he was apparently a wrestler before he was a philosopher. But everything, and I mean everything, changed when he met Socrates. That mentorship and the absolutely tragic way it ended set him on a path to create his famous school, the Academy, and to write the works that would make him immortal. And while his entire life was pretty remarkable, there was one single event that really sparked his lifelong quest to build a better world. That event was the execution of Socrates in 399 BCE. Imagine this. Plato is just 28 years old, and he has to watch as the Athenian democracy, the government of the people, condemns his teacher, the wisest man he ever knew, to death. This moment completely shattered him. It convinced him that democracy was fundamentally, fatally flawed. And it gave him one single driving ambition: to design a system where the wisest, the absolute best people would be the ones to rule. So what was the exact problem Plato was trying to solve? Well, he looked at history and he saw that government seemed totally doomed to fail, falling into this predictable and really destructive pattern. This was the central question that absolutely haunted him. Why couldn't we build a stable, just society? Why did every single attempt seem to end in total disaster? He looked around and saw what he called a nauseating roundabout of political failure. Here's how he saw it playing out. A state might start out ruled by the best, an aristocracy. But over time, he argued, that power gets too narrow, and it becomes an oligarchy, a state ruled by the rich. Of course, this concentration of wealth creates huge resentment, which eventually sparks a revolution. And then you get democracy. But Plato worried, without a properly educated population, the people just elect charming but dangerous demagogues who throw the whole state into chaos. And finally, desperate for some kind of order, the people hand all their power to a single strongman who, you guessed it, inevitably becomes a tyrant. And then the whole miserable cycle begins all over again. So, to break this cycle, Plato proposed something truly radical. He didn't just want to tinker with the system or fix a few things. No, he wanted to build an entirely new one, right from scratch. His blueprint for this ideal state is all laid out in his masterpiece, The Republic. See, for Plato, it all came down to this one crucial idea. You can't build a better state without first understanding the people who are going to live in it. He believed a government is basically a direct reflection of its citizens. So if you want to build a just society, you first have to understand the human soul. According to Plato, pretty much all of our actions come from one of three places. First, there's desire, our appetites, our instincts, the things we just want. Then there's emotion, that's our spirit, our ambition, our courage. And finally, there's knowledge, our ability to use reason and intellect. Now, each of us has all three, but for most people, one of them tends to dominate. And here's where Plato gets really clever. He maps those three parts of the soul directly onto the structure of his ideal state. So the people driven by desire, they're the producers, the farmers, the merchants, the whole economic engine of society. Those driven by emotion, they become the auxiliaries, the soldiers and the protectors. And that very, very small group of people driven by knowledge, they are the guardians, the philosopher kings who are actually fit to rule. And here, Plato states the danger as clearly as he can. A society falls apart when people take on roles they just aren't suited for. A merchant who's driven by profit can't be a wise ruler, just like a philosopher probably wouldn't make a very good soldier. Justice for him is all about each person finding their proper place and doing their part. Okay, but how in the world do you find these wise rulers? You can't just cross your fingers and hope they show up. Plato's answer was an incredibly rigorous, lifelong system of education and testing designed to filter out absolutely everyone except the best and wisest among them. And man, what a process it was. It starts with universal education for all children, which was a huge deal back then, regardless of class or gender. At age 20, there's a huge exam that filters people into the economic class. 10 years later, there's another, even harder exam that selects the soldier class. The tiny handful who remain then spend 5 years studying pure philosophy. But wait, they're still not done. After that, they have to spend 15 years out in the real world, taking on difficult jobs, getting knocked around, and being tested by life itself. It is only after surviving this entire 40-year gauntlet, at the age of 50, that they are finally considered worthy to rule. Plato believed this system would guarantee that rulers were chosen based on pure merit, not on wealth, not on family, and definitely not on popularity. Now, this whole incredible political system, it's actually resting on a much deeper, kind of mind-bending idea, Plato's famous theory of forms. This is the philosophical bedrock for his entire project. So to get it, let me ask you a question. Think about it. What's more real, a single physical dog that you can see and pet, or the eternal, perfect idea of dog itself, the very concept of dogness? It sounds weird, but Plato argued that the eternal idea of a dog is actually more real than any single physical dog you'll ever meet. See, he believed our universe is split into two separate realms. There's the physical world we all see and touch, which is always changing, temporary, and flawed. But beyond that, there's a whole other realm of perfect, eternal ideas or forms, which we can only grasp with our minds, with our reason. For Plato, this realm of ideas isn't just a mental concept, it's the true reality. And this is the absolute heart of Plato's project. His Republic isn't just a political suggestion, it's an engineering blueprint. The entire point of that insane 50-year education system is to train minds that can see beyond our flawed world and into that realm of perfect forms. The philosopher kings are the only ones qualified to rule because only they can actually perceive the perfect, eternal form of the state and use it as a blueprint to build the closest possible copy of it here on Earth. So after all of this, the cycle of governments, the three-part soul, the decades of training, what was the ultimate goal? It all comes down to Plato's central question: what is justice? And his definition is so simple, but it is unbelievably powerful. Justice, for Plato, isn't really about laws or punishment. It's about each part of a whole, whether that's the parts of your own soul or the different classes in a society, performing its own proper function and not getting in the way of the others. In other words, a just person is someone whose reason is in charge, guiding their emotions and desires. And in the exact same way, a just society is one where the producers produce, the auxiliaries protect, and the guardians rule. It's a state of perfect harmony, an efficient, beautiful whole where everyone contributes to the best of their natural ability. And that really leaves us with a final thought, doesn't it? Plato's blueprint was for a perfect, unchanging state. But our world is, well, it's anything but. So if we apply his core ideas of harmony and function, what does it even mean to build a just society now, in an age of constant, rapid, unrelenting change? That's a question Plato started, and one we're all still trying to answer.